The cafeteria erupted in shocked silence as Alexandra Stone stood over three unconscious bullies, her oversized sweater slightly torn to reveal military tattoos that shouldn't exist on a 17-year-old girl. Blood trickled from Captain Tyler Blackwood's split lip while his two accomplices lay motionless on the polished floor. What happened next would expose a web of corruption spanning generations and transform an ordinary high school into the battleground for something far more dangerous than teenage drama. 3 months earlier, the autumn morning sun filtered through towering windows as students poured into Riverside Preparatory Academy, their designer backpacks and privileged laughter creating a symphony of entitlement that echoed through marble corridors. Among them moved a ghost, Alexandra Stone, 17 years old, her auburn hair catching light as she navigated the chaos with predatory awareness disguised as teenage awkwardness. Her vintage military jacket hung loose around her slender frame, carefully concealing everything except delicate hands and sharp green eyes that missed nothing, despite the exhaustion permanently etched beneath them. She possessed natural beauty that should have drawn attention, yet something about her presence encouraged others to look away, as if recognizing danger they couldn't quite identify. Alexandra chose locker 247 in the northeastern corner, away from social clusters that had formed during the semester's first weeks. Her combination lock clicked with mechanical precision as she exchanged textbooks, each movement suggesting muscle memory rather than conscious thought. Everything about her posture screamed confidence, while simultaneously warning others to maintain distance, a contradiction that hinted at depths most teenagers simply didn't possess. The photograph tucked inside her locker showed a man in dress blues, his warm smile contrasting with the formal military bearing. Major David Stone, according to visible insignia, though Alexandra's fingers traced his face rather than his rank, with reverence reserved for sacred things. She closed the locker and melted back into the stream of students, invisible despite her striking appearance. World history unfolded in room 312 with the predictable rhythm of elite education. Professor Williams droned through the Civil War, while Alexandra took notes in handwriting that belonged in museums, each letter formed with precision, suggesting training far beyond standard curriculum. Her jacket remained zipped despite classroom warmth, sleeves pulled down with conscious effort to conceal secrets written in scar tissue and ink. 2 rows behind her, Tyler Blackwood studied her profile with predatory focus. As Senator James Blackwood's son, he moved through life with absolute certainty that his desires would manifest simply because he'd expressed them. 4 years at Riverside had reinforced this belief through victories both academic and social, creating someone who viewed resistance as temporary confusion rather than genuine opposition. "New girl's been here 3 weeks without talking to anyone," he murmured to Vincent Kane, who consulted his phone beneath the desk. Their conversation carried enough volume to ensure Alexandra heard every calculated word, designed to create social pressure through public evaluation. Vincent glanced up from digital reconnaissance conducted with thoroughness befitting someone whose father controlled the district attorney's office. Judge Harrison Kane had taught his son that information represented the most valuable currency, and Vincent inherited both sharp intellect and understanding of how to weaponize knowledge against opponents. "Alexandra Stone," he reported quietly. "Transferred from Westfield Academy after family complications. Mother remarried, stepfather relocated. Standard story. But there's a 6-month gap in enrollment records nobody explains." And Tyler's interest sharpened immediately. Gaps represented opportunities for exploitation, especially combined with obvious vulnerability through social isolation. His psychological profile had been shaped by years of obtaining everything through charm, intimidation, and implied threats his family's influence could arrange. "Think she's hiding something useful?" The question carried hopeful anticipation. "Everyone hides something," Vincent replied with cynical wisdom earned through years of blackmailing classmates. "Question is whether it serves our purposes." Behind them, Derek Foster stretched his massive frame in undersized furniture, Letterman jacket straining across shoulders that had broken both defensive lines and emergency room equipment. As Police Chief Robert Foster's son, Derek understood that physical advantages accomplished things money and influence couldn't, and his scarred knuckles rested like weapons awaiting deployment. Alexandra's pen paused as she processed the conversation. Training taught her to recognize threat assessment in early stages, and their calculated discussion triggered alarm systems most teenagers didn't possess. Tremors returned to her hands as she forced continued writing, each letter now requiring conscious effort to maintain precision. The bell's jarring summons sent students flooding toward exits with relieved energy. Alexandra gathered belongings with economical movements, but Tyler's approach blocked her path with territorial authority. "Alexandra, right?" His voice carried practiced charm backed by confidence of someone who'd never encountered genuine rejection. "I'm Tyler Blackwood. My father's Senator Blackwood. Perhaps you've heard of him." She met his gaze with polite neutrality, revealing nothing about internal calculations. "Nice to meet you." The response was perfectly courteous, yet completely dismissive, a combination Tyler's psychology struggled processing. In his experience, beautiful girls either gravitated toward power or sought protection from it. Alexandra's indifference suggested either remarkable confidence or dangerous naivety, both intriguing him in ways bypassing rational decision-making. "We thought you might join us for lunch," he continued, gesturing toward Vincent and Derek with assumption that his offer represented privilege rather than potential threat. New students sometimes struggle finding their place. Alexandra's smile contained zero warmth. "I appreciate the offer, but I prefer eating alone. Helps me process new environments more effectively." She stepped around him with fluid grace, disappearing into hallway crowds before he could respond. Behind her, the three boys exchanged glances, communicating volumes about wounded pride and escalating interest. Tyler Blackwood had experienced something outside his understanding of social dynamics, and unfamiliar rejection began transforming into something far more dangerous. Physics class in room 205 provided Alexandra with glimpses of why Riverside's academic reputation extended beyond athletic achievements. Dr. Martinez demonstrated quantum mechanics, with enthusiasm making advanced concepts accessible, and Alexandra found herself genuinely engaged with material connecting to training received during those missing months Vincent had identified. She chose a lab station in the back corner, positioning providing clear sight lines to both entrances while keeping her back protected. To observers, she simply preferred natural light, but tactical awareness revealed itself in how her eyes periodically scanned the room with systematic thoroughness. Maya Rodriguez occupied the adjacent station, a petite girl with nervous energy who kept glancing toward doors as if expecting unwelcome visitors. Her anxiety intensified when Tyler's crew entered with casual arrogance of students believing rules applied differently to them. "You're the new girl," Maya whispered as they began measuring electromagnetic fields. Her voice carried cautious hope of someone who'd spent months sitting alone, recognizing a potential ally. "I'm Maya Rodriguez." Alexandra nodded, while carefully calibrating equipment with precision that impressed Dr. Martinez from across the room. "Alexandra Stone, nice meeting you." "Listen," Maya continued, voice dropping as she noticed Tyler watching their interaction with predatory focus. "Those guys behind us, stay away from them. They're not who they pretend to be." The warning triggered Alexandra's training in reading social dynamics and threat assessment. Maya's body language suggested personal experience with referenced danger, and how she unconsciously touched her left wrist indicated physical intimidation had been involved. "What do you mean?" Alexandra asked, while appearing to focus entirely on their experiment. Maya's laugh contained no humor. "Tyler and his friends control this school through fear. They select targets, usually girls who won't fight back, and make their lives miserable until they transfer or drop out. I lasted 6 months before my parents intervened." Alexandra's hands remained steady, adding measurement solutions, but her pulse accelerated, recognizing patterns extending far beyond typical teenage bullying. The systematic approach Maya described suggested coordinated psychological warfare rather than random cruelty. "What happened to you?" "Photos," Maya whispered, face flushing with remembered humiliation. "Vincent skilled with technology. He obtained pictures of me changing after swim practice, then used them for control. Said if I didn't comply with their demands, the images would circulate everywhere." Alexandra's grip tightened on her beaker until knuckles turned white. The casual violation Maya described triggered protective instincts she'd spent months learning to suppress. Her father's voice echoed through memory. "Some people exploit kindness, sweetheart. That's when kindness becomes weakness." "How did it end?" "My dad's a federal prosecutor. When he discovered what was happening, he threatened to destroy their families legally. But most kids lack that protection." The conversation ended abruptly as Dr. Martinez approached their station, but Alexandra had gathered enough intelligence to understand the threat profile she faced. These weren't typical bullies driven by insecurity. They represented systematic operations designed to exploit vulnerability for entertainment and control. Lunch arrived with the weight of impending confrontation. Alexandra chose a corner table, positioning herself with her back against walls and clear sightlines to every entrance. Her tray contained efficient nutrition: turkey sandwich, apple, water, prioritizing function over enjoyment. She ate with mechanical precision while observing social dynamics throughout the cafeteria. Her position provided acoustic advantages, allowing her to monitor conversations while appearing focused on her meal. The jacket remained zipped despite room temperature, sleeves pulled down with unconscious habit of someone protecting secrets. Tyler occupied the power table at the cafeteria's heart, his crew arranged in formation, suggesting military planning rather than casual friendship. Vincent scrolled through his tablet, gathering intelligence with professional thoroughness. "I've been investigating her background more deeply," he reported. "The transfer story checks out, but those missing months remain unexplained. No social media presence, no tagged photos, no digital footprint until 6 months ago." Derek cracked knuckles while studying Alexandra with analytical attention typically reserved for opposing quarterbacks. Maybe rehab, rich girl problems, family dysfunction, or witness protection, Tyler suggested, imagination constructing scenarios, justifying his growing obsession. "What matters is she thinks she can ignore us without consequences. That disrespect spreads if we don't address it immediately." Tyler rose with fluid grace, adjusting his jacket in practiced motion of someone preparing for performance. His approach to conquest followed patterns refined through years of psychological warfare disguised as social interaction, phase 1 involving overwhelming charm, backed by status and implied threats. He crossed the cafeteria with measured steps, his movement causing conversations to pause as students recognized the significance. Tyler Blackwood didn't approach random tables without specific intentions, and anticipation of drama spread like electricity before storms. Alexandra continued eating with methodical precision, seemingly oblivious to attention focused on her table. She didn't look up when his shadow fell across her meal, though peripheral vision tracked his companions spreading into supporting positions. "Mind if we join you?" His voice carried practiced charm that had opened doors throughout his academic career, though the question remained rhetorical. He was already pulling out chairs. "Actually, I do mind," Alexandra responded without hesitation, or the usual flutter accompanying interactions with Riverside's aristocracy. She continued eating with mechanical efficiency. "I prefer eating alone." The rejection was so direct, so unexpected, that Tyler paused mid-sit. In 4 years at Riverside, no one had simply told him no when he'd made polite social requests. His brain struggled processing this experience, while wounded pride transformed into something more dangerous. "I don't think you understand how things work here," he continued, settling despite her objection. "I'm Tyler Blackwood. My father represents this state in the United States Senate. I determine who succeeds socially at this school." Alexandra finally raised her eyes, meeting his gaze with steady assessment, holding no trace of awe or nervousness typically accompanying his introductions. Instead, she studied him with clinical detachment, as if he were a specimen requiring analysis rather than a person demanding respect. "Fascinating," she said, returning to her meal. "I'm Alexandra Stone. My father served this country in ways that matter. I decide who gets to interrupt my lunch." The comeback was delivered with surgical precision, each word calculated for maximum psychological impact, while revealing nothing about training, allowing her to remain calm under pressure that would break most teenagers. Tyler's face flushed as his techniques were turned against him with compound interest. Vincent appeared at his shoulder, recognizing escalation signs and moving to provide support. His presence served multiple functions, demonstrating Tyler's backing while gathering intelligence about unexpected resistance threatening their established social order. "Sorry about my friend," Vincent interjected with practiced diplomacy. "He's not used to meeting girls with actual standards. I'm Vincent Kane. My father sits on the state Supreme Court." Alexandra's expression didn't change as she processed additional information about the power structure she was dealing with. Training taught her to recognize institutional corruption when it revealed itself, and casual name-dropping suggested coordination between families extending beyond typical networking. "Congratulations on your genetic lottery success," she replied evenly. "Now both of you can leave." Derek joined them, his massive frame effectively blocking Alexandra's most direct exit path. His positioning wasn't threatening yet, merely noticeable, but psychological pressure began accumulating as other students realized they were witnessing something unprecedented in Riverside's social hierarchy. "Actually, Alexandra," Vincent said, emphasizing her name with subtle mockery while producing his tablet with practiced efficiency. "I've been researching your background. Interesting gaps in your digital history. No social media, no tagged photos, no online presence until 6 months ago." For the first time, Alexandra's mechanical eating pattern hesitated. The pause lasted exactly 2 seconds before she resumed cutting her apple into precise segments. But Vincent's trained eye caught momentary tension, confirming he'd identified a pressure point worth exploiting. "Some people value privacy," she responded, voice maintaining the same level tone despite internal alarm systems Vincent's investigation had triggered, especially when their families work in sensitive positions. Sensitive how? Tyler leaned forward, his mask of charming sophistication finally slipping to reveal something harder underneath. The rejection had progressed beyond mere inconvenience to active challenge, threatening the social order he'd spent years establishing through careful cultivation of fear and respect. Alexandra set down her plastic knife with deliberate precision, placing it parallel to her tray with exactness suggesting military protocols rather than cafeteria etiquette. When she turned to face the 3 boys surrounding her table, her smile contained no warmth, but rather cold calculation of someone evaluating threat levels and response options. "Here's what's going to happen," she said quietly, her voice carrying a different quality that made Derek unconsciously step backward despite his size advantage. "You're going to return to your table, continue your little power games with people who find them entertaining, and pretend this conversation never occurred." The threat was delivered with such casual confidence that momentarily none responded. The idea that someone half their size and outnumbered 3-1 would offer ultimatums seemed absurd enough to qualify as performance art. Yet something about Alexandra's posture suggested capabilities extending far beyond typical teenage bravado. Tyler stood as well, his height advantage allowing him to tower over Alexandra in a display of physical intimidation that had cowed dozens of previous targets. His hand moved toward her arm, intending to grab her wrist and demonstrate control through physical dominance. His fingers never made contact. Alexandra's movement was so subtle, so economical, that witnesses disagreed about what exactly happened. Her body shifted almost imperceptibly, weight redistributed with fluid grace, and suddenly Tyler found himself stumbling backward into his chair as his intended grab met empty air. The motion appeared accidental, like he simply lost balance, but the sharp intake from all three boys suggested otherwise. "Oops," Alexandra said mildly, gathering belongings with unhurried efficiency. "These floors can be slippery. You should be more careful." She stood and moved toward the exit with measured steps, posture unchanged despite the confrontation. Behind her, Tyler's crew remained in various states of confusion and wounded pride, their established patterns of dominance temporarily disrupted by someone refusing to acknowledge their authority. But as Alexandra reached the cafeteria doors, Tyler's voice carried across the room with deadly promise. "This isn't over, new girl. Not even close." Alexandra paused without turning, her hand resting on the door handle while every student held their breath. When she finally spoke, her words carried certainty that made several witnesses reach for phones to start recording. "No," she agreed quietly, "it's not." Afternoon classes passed with deceptive calm, but beneath the surface, invisible currents of tension flowed through Riverside's corridors like electrical charges before storms. Alexandra moved between advanced literature and calculus with the same measured pace, her jacket concealing more than physical form as whispered conversations followed in her wake. Word of the cafeteria confrontation spread through communication networks with viral efficiency. Text messages, social media posts, and hushed conversations transformed a simple lunch encounter into legend. The new girl who dared dismiss Tyler Blackwood became the subject of speculation, admiration, and growing concern among students understanding inevitable consequences of challenging Riverside's established power structure. Maya found Alexandra at her locker between classes, nervous energy more pronounced than usual as she glanced repeatedly over her shoulder. Experience with Tyler's crew taught her to recognize escalation signs, and everything about the current situation suggested dangerous territory ahead. "You need to be careful," she whispered urgently while pretending to organize textbooks. "After lunch, they're going to come after you harder. Tyler doesn't let anyone embarrass him without payback." Alexandra's hands remained steady, exchanging books, but peripheral vision tracked movement throughout the hallway with systematic thoroughness. Training taught her to recognize when surveillance transitioned from casual to operational, and the number of students paying attention had increased exponentially since lunch. "What's the worst they've done?" Maya's face paled as memories surfaced that she'd spent months trying to suppress. Last year, there was a girl named Jessica Park who refused to help Vincent cheat on finals. They made her life so miserable she attempted suicide and was hospitalized. Her family moved to another state. The information triggered something cold and dangerous in Alexandra's chest, familiar rage she'd spent years learning to control. Her father's voice echoed through memory. Anger is a tool, sweetheart. But tools are only useful when you choose how to use them. How did they do it? Systematically, Meyer explained, voice dropping even lower. Social isolation first, spreading rumors about mental instability, then cyber harassment through fake accounts. Finally, they planted drugs in her locker and called anonymous tips to her parents and police. Alexandra's grip tightened on her textbook until knuckles turned white beneath sleeves. The calculated cruelty Meyer described represented something far more dangerous than typical teenage bullying. These boys had weaponized their privileges to destroy lives with methodical precision of professional operations. The final bell rang, signaling day's end and beginning of after-school activities. Students flooded toward exits and athletic facilities with relieved energy, but Alexandra moved against the current toward quieter sections where surveillance became more difficult. She chose the old gymnasium, a building predating modern security systems and providing acoustic isolation from main campus. Her decision appeared random, but actually followed tactical protocols for controlling engagement environments when confrontation became inevitable. The gymnasium's interior echoed with decades of athletic achievement and student memories, hardwood floors scarred by countless games and celebrations. Alexandra positioned herself in the center, back to no walls, but with clear sight lines to every entrance. To casual observers, she appeared to simply enjoy afternoon sunlight streaming through high windows, but her posture suggested readiness for something far more serious than nostalgia. Tyler entered first, movement deliberate and predatory as he surveyed the empty gymnasium with satisfaction. Behind him, Vincent and Derek spread out in formation, blocking main exits while leaving emergency doors accessible. Their tactical positioning revealed planning and coordination, extending beyond spontaneous teenage drama. "Smart choice of location," Tyler observed, voice carrying cold authority promising violence rather than mere psychological intimidation. "Private, soundproof, no witnesses to misinterpret what happens next." Alexandra remained motionless in the center, though her weight shifted almost imperceptibly to the balls of her feet. Her jacket hung loose around her frame, concealing subtle adjustments in muscle tension, preparing her body for explosive movement. "You said this wasn't over," she replied evenly. "I assumed you'd want to finish our conversation." Vincent produced his tablet, angling to capture the scene while maintaining distance from potential physical confrontation. His role as documentarian served multiple purposes, creating evidence for blackmail while providing legal protection through selective editing of whatever violence followed. "We've been researching your background more thoroughly," he said with practiced smugness. "Those missing months in your academic record. We found interesting connections to juvenile detention facilities and psychiatric treatment centers. The lies were delivered with confident authority that had convinced administrators and parents in previous operations. Vincent's understanding of institutional psychology allowed him to construct narratives aligning with adult expectations about troubled teenagers and family dysfunction. Alexandra's expression didn't change, though something flickered behind her eyes that made Derek unconsciously step backward despite his size advantage. Training had prepared her for psychological warfare far more sophisticated than anything these boys could devise, but maintaining cover required careful balance between apparent vulnerability and hidden strength. "That's a fascinating story," she said quietly. "Completely fictional, but creative." Tyler stepped closer, height advantage allowing him to tower over her in physical intimidation that had broken stronger personalities than Alexandra's apparent composure. His proximity forced her to acknowledge his presence while limiting movement options in what he believed represented tactical superiority. "Here's what's going to happen," he began, voice dropping to what he considered his most threatening register. You're going to apologize for embarrassing us in front of the entire school. Then you're going to accept certain social arrangements demonstrating your proper understanding of how things work here." Alexandra tilted her head slightly, studying him with clinical detachment, suggesting evaluation rather than fear. "What kind of social arrangements?" Derek cracked knuckles while moving to block her path toward emergency exits, massive presence designed to eliminate escape routes and create psychological pressure through implied physical dominance. His scarred hands flexed in anticipation of violence that had become inevitable. "The kind involving you, understanding your place in our social structure," he rumbled with satisfaction. "Starting with some private time to discuss your attitude problem." The threat crossed boundaries, justifying defensive action under any legal standard, though Alexandra's mission parameters required gathering more evidence before responding with potentially lethal force. Her phone, concealed within her jacket pocket, had been recording since entering the gymnasium. "And if I refuse, then things become unpleasant very quickly," Tyler promised, producing a manila folder filled with documents appearing to be official law enforcement reports. The papers represented sophisticated forgeries designed to support whatever narrative became necessary to destroy her reputation and legal standing. These documents detail your involvement in drug trafficking, assault charges, and psychiatric evaluations, questioning your stability and fitness for attending public school, Vincent explained with practiced authority. "One phone call to the right people, and your academic career ends permanently." Alexandra's jacket shifted slightly as she adjusted her stance, the movement revealing a glimpse of ink beneath her sleeve that made Tyler lean forward with sudden interest. The partial visibility appeared accidental, but actually represented calculated revelation designed to trigger escalation that would justify everything she was about to do. "You're making a mistake," she said quietly, voice carrying a different quality that made the gymnasium's acoustics seem suddenly oppressive. "But I suppose everyone learns from their mistakes eventually." Something in her tone triggered Tyler's instinct for violence. The psychological pressure of sustained resistance finally overwhelmed his need for dominance through intimidation alone. He lunged forward with aggressive confidence, hands reaching for her shoulders in a move designed to demonstrate physical control over someone he perceived as helpless. His fingers never made contact. Alexandra's response began with a subtle shift in weight distribution that transformed apparent vulnerability into perfect combat positioning. Her right hand deflected his grab, while her left elbow drove backward into his solar plexus with surgical precision, emptying his lungs and dropping him to his knees as he gasped for air that refused to return. Derek charged forward with devastating momentum, massive frame moving like a freight train toward what he believed represented easy prey. Alexandra sidestepped his rush with fluid grace, while extending her leg at precisely the right angle to redirect his own force into the gymnasium's brick wall with a sound like breaking furniture. Vincent abandoned his position near the entrance, fumbling for something in his jacket pocket while his tablet clattered to the floor. Alexandra's messenger bag swung in a precise arc that caught him across the temple, with enough force to render him unconscious before he understood what happened. The entire confrontation lasted exactly 4 seconds according to the timestamp on Vincent's fallen tablet, which had been live streaming their planned assault to an audience that witnessed something completely different than expected. Alexandra stood among 3 unconscious boys, breathing controlled and posture relaxed, despite the violence that just concluded. Her jacket had shifted during brief combat, revealing intricate military tattoo covering her right forearm. The design featured an eagle with outstretched wings above the motto, "Leave no one behind," in precise script, the insignia of the 82nd Airborne Division, rendered with artistic skill, suggesting professional work rather than teenage rebellion. Tyler regained consciousness first, vision clearing to find Alexandra crouched beside him with clinical concern rather than triumph. Her proximity allowed him to see details casual observation had missed. Surgical precision of scars on her knuckles, the way she moved with economic grace suggesting training far beyond self-defense classes. She stood and retrieved Vincent's tablet, ending the live stream that had been broadcasting their humiliation to unknown audiences before turning attention to evidence they'd brought to intimidate her. The forged documents disappeared into her jacket pocket as proof of federal crimes that would justify everything following. "You chose violence," she continued, voice carrying absolute certainty. "I simply spoke it more fluently." Maya appeared in the gymnasium doorway with perfect timing, her phone already documenting the aftermath, while her expression showed satisfaction rather than surprise. Her nervous energy had been replaced by confidence of someone whose patience had finally been rewarded. "I called 911, she announced. "Thank you," Alexandra said simply. Though the words carried depths of meaning, Maya recognized immediately. Police sirens wailed in the distance as Alexandra surveyed the unconscious forms of Riverside's former power structure. Tyler lay curled around his injured abdomen. Vincent bled from a head wound requiring stitches, and Derek remained motionless against the brick wall that stopped his charge. "Will they be okay?" Maya asked, though her concern appeared perfunctory. "They'll recover," Alexandra confirmed with clinical assessment. "Bruised pride heals faster than broken bones, and I was careful not to cause permanent damage." The first police car arrived with flashing lights and urgent sirens, followed quickly by paramedics who began assessing injuries, while Maya provided witness testimony, establishing clear self-defense. Her phone video captured Alexandra being attacked by 3 larger opponents, the violence of their assault, and her minimal response that ended the confrontation without excessive force. Within an hour, the gymnasium filled with investigators, medical personnel, and school administrators trying to understand how Riverside's most powerful students ended up unconscious after attacking a girl weighing half what any of them did. Physical evidence told an unambiguous story of assault and justified self-defense, while the forged documents in Alexandra's possession provided grounds for federal investigation. Principal Morrison arrived with the harried expression of someone whose career depended on managing crises, threatening the school's reputation and his personal livelihood. His immediate focus centered on damage control rather than justice, a priority becoming obvious when he began questioning Alexandra's actions rather than addressing the assault she survived. "Miss Stone," he began with practiced authority, "I understand you've been involved in an altercation resulting in serious injuries to 3 of our students. Can you explain what happened?" Alexandra's response came with calm precision, impressing investigating officers. 3 boys cornered me in an isolated location, threatened me with fabricated criminal charges and attempted physical assault. I defended myself using minimal necessary force to neutralize the threat they represented. The explanation aligned perfectly with witness testimony and physical evidence, while demonstrating understanding of legal terminology, suggesting familiarity with law enforcement procedures. Detective Maria Santos, leading the investigation, recognized training extending far beyond civilian self-defense courses. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" she asked with professional curiosity. "My father taught me basic self-defense before his military deployment," Alexandra replied, maintaining her cover story while acknowledging capabilities that couldn't be hidden. He said preparation prevents victimization. The investigation concluded with charges filed against Tyler, Vincent, and Derek for conspiracy, assault, and attempted extortion. The forged documents triggered federal involvement, and within days, FBI agents arrived to investigate criminal enterprises extending far beyond high school harassment. 2 weeks later, Alexandra sat in the school library reading university brochures she'd never need, while Maya approached with newspaper articles detailing the expanding investigation. Senator Blackwood announced his resignation amid corruption allegations, Judge Kane recused himself from all pending cases, and Police Chief Foster faced internal affairs review for obstruction of justice. 43 students have come forward with testimony about systematic harassment, Maya reported with satisfaction. Your phone recording triggered the federal investigation, bringing down their entire network. Alexandra nodded while gathering belongings with practiced efficiency. Her mission had exceeded all operational parameters, dismantling a criminal conspiracy while maintaining cover identity. But success brought complications requiring careful management. "Are you leaving?" Maya asked. "My family's relocating," Alexandra explained, which contained enough truth to avoid detection while concealing operational necessities. Fresh start somewhere new. As she walked toward the library exit, Alexandra's phone buzzed with a message from an unlisted number. The text contained coordinates she recognized from classified briefings, followed by a phoenix symbol confirming her Riverside success had attracted attention from international criminal organizations. Her next assignment waited in Nevada, where similar patterns of privileged corruption required investigation and dismantling. The war her father died fighting continued in boardrooms and prep schools rather than foreign battlefields, but the mission remained unchanged. Leave no one behind, especially those who couldn't defend themselves. Alexandra deleted the message and drove toward the airport, where transportation waited to carry her toward challenges that made Tyler Blackwood's crew look like amateur hour. Behind her, Riverside Preparatory rebuilt while implementing security measures designed to prevent future infiltration, unaware that their nightmare was just one small battle in a much larger war. The rental car's rearview mirror reflected a town that would never fully understand what saved it from years of systematic corruption. Local news reports focused on dramatic arrests and federal investigation, but they missed the deeper truth about how quickly privilege could transform into predatory behavior when left unchecked. Her phone rang with a call from a number appearing in no directory. She answered without speaking, listening to a voice carrying authority earned through decades of dangerous operations, protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Exceptional work, Agent Stone. The intelligence you gathered triggered 17 additional investigations across 9 states. The Riverside operation was smaller than initially assessed, but your methods exceeded all expectations. Alexandra merged onto the highway leading away from the town that briefly became her battlefield. How many more schools? Reconnaissance suggests 51 institutions compromised by similar networks. Privileged families using academic environments to recruit the next generation of organized crime. Your success proves our infiltration protocols work against targets who believe teenagers pose no threat. Through her side window, Alexandra watched suburban neighborhoods where families slept peacefully, unaware that their children's schools had become recruiting grounds for operations that would challenge veteran federal agents. Her mission represented a new front in an ancient war between those protecting the innocent and those exploiting vulnerability for profit and entertainment. At Riverside Preparatory, Maya stood at Alexandra's former locker, now occupied by another transfer student who would never face harassment that once made education secondary to survival. The brass nameplate briefly reading a stone had been replaced, but Maya remembered every detail about the girl who proved strength came in forms bullies never expected. Principal Morrison submitted his resignation after investigators discovered his deliberate ignorance of systematic harassment, generating donations from grateful criminal families. His replacement brought experience from schools prioritizing student safety over prestigious reputations and athletic achievements. But Maya understood truths official reports couldn't acknowledge. Alexandra Stone was never really a transfer student seeking peaceful education. Her presence at Riverside represented surgical intervention designed to excise corruption before it metastasized into something decades of traditional law enforcement had failed to address. The private jet waiting at the regional airport bore corporate logos suggesting legitimate business rather than classified government operations. Alexandra boarded without luggage beyond a single messenger bag containing documents establishing her next identity and operational parameters for dismantling criminal networks that had operated with impunity for generations. Her father's photograph remained tucked inside the bag's hidden compartment, along with the medal the army presented to her mother at his funeral. Major David Stone died believing some sacrifices protected freedoms most people never realized they possessed. His daughter continued that mission in classrooms and cafeterias where predators wore Letterman jackets instead of enemy uniforms. As the aircraft climbed toward cruising altitude, Alexandra reviewed intelligence files about her next targets, while lights of Riverside faded into darkness below. Somewhere in Nevada, privileged teenagers were planning harassment campaigns against vulnerable classmates, unaware their activities had attracted attention from operatives trained to end threats before they became tragedies. The war continued, one school at a time, one corrupted network at a time, until every student could learn without fear, and every predator learned that privilege provided no protection against justice delivered by those who understood that some battles were worth fighting, no matter the cost.